Hello, everyone. This is Jeff Carter again with another COVID-19 U.S. case update. Before I get started today, I'd just like to encourage you to go ahead and click that like and subscribe button and click the bell icon to be notified of future updates. And thank you for watching. In this update, I'm going to look at the latest data that was released by the CDC as of April 1st at 4 p.m. yesterday. And then I'm going to dig into looking at some growth rates and also a little bit into the math to help us determine, exactly when we might be able to see this situation improve, and also to give us a little bit of context on the numbers we're looking at. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so here's the latest data that was provided by the CDC as of April 1st. Yesterday at 4 p.m. Eastern, the number of cases, cumulative number of cases in the U.S. reached over 200,000 at 213,000. I've mentioned before that this chart can be expected to just continue to increase rapidly, and eventually will start to plateau. But as you can see right now, it doesn't look like it's anywhere near that. So let's take a look at the growth rate. Last time I provided an update, the daily growth rate was about 15%, and that does not seem to have changed much. So a lot of the earlier volatility that had been seen has smoothed out, and we're sitting at about 15% daily growth, which, as I mentioned previously, means that the cumulative number of cases, if this rate is maintained, can be expected to double in 5 days. I mean, what does 15% even mean as far as the life cycle of this pandemic? And so I'm going to get into a little bit of math here, a little bit of calculus, but don't worry, I'm not gonna dig too deep into the numbers, just the concepts. So here we go. All right. So that cumulative chart that I showed you from the CDC, that is basically this blue chart. Now, right here, we are somewhere along this upward trajectory, but we don't know exactly where we're at. Eventually, we can see it the growth rate begin to slow and then plateau. This is to be expected because assuming no preventative measures are taken or mitigation measures are taken, eventually we hit 100% of the population, and obviously you cannot have more than 100% of the population. So this blue line is the cumulative. It's an example of what the cumulative case chart will eventually look like. You'll notice that I blacked out these numbers on the side. That's because I'm not actually trying to make any predictions about what the growth rate should or shouldn't be or anything like that. I'm just trying to show you the concept behind how these numbers can be expected to grow. So, as I said, we don't know exactly where we're at in this blue chart, right? So, a very good way to try and determine that is to look at the derivative. And so, this orange chart right here is the derivative of this S-curve. So, and to put it colloquially, these are just simply new cases. So, this chart is the new cases that are added every single day. And by the way, this orange chart is on a different scale. So if it was on the same scale, it would be somewhere down here. But just so you could see it easier. Now, at some point, this growth in new cases, so the new cases keep growing and growing and growing every day until at some point it reaches a peak, and then it begins to decline. And that is when the growth rate, you see this growth rate start to slow, and that's the begin of the plateau. And then this is the second derivative, which basically means the growth rate of the new cases. So you see that new cases continue to grow and grow and grow until this point, and then the growth rate in the new cases begins to decline until it actually goes negative. And so I'm going to describe how these concepts can help us look at where we're at in this overall picture. So if you look at the change from day to day in the cumulative chart, you get the newly reported cases. So this bar right here represents the number of cases that were added to the cumulative case total yesterday, which it turns out to be 27,000. So if you look at this chart, it does not look very comforting. It looks like we're still in a steep upward climb, which indicates that we're nowhere close to the growth rate in the cumulative cases slowing. However, as the people that have seen my prior videos have known, I like to look at another data point provided by the CDC. So this is the date of illness onset chart. The reason I like to look at this chart is because there's all these cases that are being reported today, but what's actually of interest in a pandemic is when did that person contract the illness? Right now, the number of illnesses, the number in this chart that have a date of illness onset recorded is only 53,709, which is basically a 25% sample of the total cumulative number of cases at this point. Basically, any case reported today may be added to any of these charts. So I'm not going to go into much detail. If you need some explanation on that, I encourage you to go back and look at my 2 earlier videos, which I explain in more detail. Okay, so I'm going to go into exactly how these have been trending over the last 3 days. Okay, so the last time I did a video, it was on March 31st, and the data was actually March 30th. Video was on March 30th, and the data was from over the weekend. So this is what that chart looked like before. We have each day, we see March 23rd, March 24th, March 25th. These are the reporting days, okay? And then the actual bar itself is the date of illness onset. So we see as this has been progressing throughout time, the peaks have been moving further to the right, okay? Which just means that the date of onset, the number of reported cases with the date of onset later has been increasing. Okay, so I've just moved this chart. I've expanded this y-axis here to try to provide room for the data that I'm going to introduce. So this is the same chart as before, but I'm going to show you how this data has been trending over the last 3 days. Okay, so this is the data that was presented. It was reported on March 31st by the CDC. It's the data from the end of day, March 30th. The orange are the new cases. So I'm going to just keep going through the next 3 days, but just so you know, the orange is the new, and then that goes to blue, and then we're going to go to the next day's new cases, which will be orange. Okay, so those are the cases that were reported April 1st as of March 31st. So those are the cases that were reported by the CD on April 1st, but were as of March 31st. And finally, the cases reported today were as of 4 p.m. on April 1st. Okay. All right, so what I would like to show you here in this chart, in my prior video, I said that I expected that my prior video was 3 days ago, so this actually was the chart as of 3 days ago. The peak was here on, I believe that is March 16th, okay? And I said that I expected this peak, this like secondary peak right here, to take over, okay? So something that I actually find very, let me just put it as I'm cautiously optimistic, this second peak has not. We've had some new cases added. Obviously, the chart has grown overall as new cases are being reported. However, the date of onset peak actually has not moved further into the future. So, and also, as you'll notice that as I was adding those new cases in orange, the new cases in orange, and you can see them here. Each new color is a little bit it's skinnier. So that shows that the newer days that are reporting less new cases. So while there were, on the newly reported cases chart, it was 27,000, and it was the biggest day so far. When we look at it on date of onset, we're actually not reaching a new peak yet, which I find to be it's not reassuring yet, but it does give me some optimism that the rate of growth may be slowing down. Okay. Now let's take a look at one more chart I like to look at, which is the logarithmic. Okay, here's the logarithmic scale. Now this is just to show the rate of doubling. It's hard to see where we were at before, but this color right here was the one that I showed before. So you see that it had started to like kind of level, and here it's grown a little bit, right? So there's really not much to see here. Right now, it's difficult to tell from this chart if it's slowing or not. Again, like I said, I'm starting to have some cautious optimism that the rate may be slowing, but it's just hard to tell from this chart. So, okay, what are the takeaways from what I just presented? Well, because the number of cases on the date of onset chart have not reached a new peak after March 16th, and the orange daily cases that are being reported every day are those, the thickness of those bars has certainly decreased from last week. I'm starting to have some cautious optimism that we may actually be somewhere in this area, okay? Or another way of looking at it is potentially in this area, okay? So the cumulative rate has not started to slow yet. However, I believe that we may be reaching a point where we may be starting to slow down just a little bit. Obviously, any kind of slowdown we can see at all is incredibly important. And while I'm not confident at this point that we're going to actually be reaching the peak in new cases, I do think that we may be starting to slow down just a tiny bit in the change in new cases. So certainly that is a positive. This is not any. I don't want anyone to take away from this. Oh, great! Now I can, stop doing the social distancing, and I can, be totally confident about like not having to wash my hands as much. That's not what I'm saying at all. I want everyone out there to be extremely, extremely careful. Continue your social distancing. Continue your hand washing, because I want everyone out there to stay safe and healthy out there. This virus is still spreading. However, I do have a little bit of very, very tentative optimism that the new cases might be slowing somewhat. Obviously, time will tell, and I will have updates in the near future, and we'll see if this is starting to pan out. Let's hope it is. All right. So with that, I want to thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to be notified. Also, I ask that you please share this video with anyone else who may find this content interesting. And once again, I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy out there. And let's all do what we can to mitigate the spread of this disease. Thank you, and I will be back soon with more information.